scores majestically.
Oh my word! Fabulous!
Oh, what a strike that is. Simply spectacular.
Oh, it's an absolute beauty, isn't it?
The best goal of the night.
It all starts here.
Hello and welcome to National League 72. What a night of football it was on Tuesday in the National League. 12 games, 34 goals, and we were there covering it on Multi-Match Live. It was an eventful evening, wasn't it, Aaron?
Yeah, it was. There was some unexpected results, but as we all expected, Barnet, top of the division, and romped to a storming win.
Yeah, it was a 5-star performance from the Bees. Have they got one hand on that trophy now?
I think so. You know, they've now found themselves 9 points clear at the top of the division. Obviously, York have got that game in hand, so they can close the gap. But, you know, the results last night definitely swayed in Barnet's favour. It's just about keeping consistent now and concentrating on what they need to do.
10 games to go, 24 points, wins Barnet the title, 8 victories, that's all it is. Can you see them doing it?
Well, it's easier said than done, that's for sure. Listen, the form that they're in and the consistency that they've shown for a long period of time now, everything would suggest that they're going to go on and do it. I do definitely feel that Barnet are just like they're competing with themselves now. They're not really worried about what Forest Green are doing, what York are doing. They've got a points tally, and after speaking to Dean Brennan, you know they fell just short last year. This year, they're adamant that they're going to hit their points tally and go up as champions.
You're right. It's exactly what they've got to do, just focus on their own games. But on that night, it was a great result for them as well because Forest Green and York City both lost. How disappointing is that for York at home in front of their own fans to get beat by Altrincham?
Yeah, it's definitely disappointing. You have to give credit to Altrincham. They're a very good team. You know, the way Phil Parkinson sets his teams up, they're always going to go and give you a game. So this wasn't a gimme by any stretch of the imagination. And they've got their own aspirations of getting in the playoffs again themselves. So it's a difficult one to take because Barnet went on and got the 3 points. You know, they are that much further away now. It is disappointing. But again, you look at where they were last season and what the progression that they've made, you know, I'm sure that Adam Hinshelwood will still be very pleased with the way that his team's performing, the amount of points that they've managed to accumulate up to this point. And, you know, they've just got to keep taking it game by game. And if they have to do it through the playoffs, then so be it.
Yeah, the fans have been having their say on social media as well. We can read a few tweets out that have been said. Sam Ratcliffe says, think if we're being honest with ourselves, we 100% don't deserve to win the league, even if we had won tonight. Do you agree with that?
Listen, I think it's harsh. I think
harsh,
at the moment, the team that's sitting top of the division are probably the team that deserves to win the league. You know, if they dropped off massively from now to the end of the season and all of a sudden someone overtook them, then you'd have to say they deserve to win it. So, yeah, I don't necessarily agree with.
Another fan says, playoffs it is then. Let's just pray to God it's not versus Altrincham in the semis or finals. That's from at All Things City. And the reason they say that is because Altrincham are very much York City's bogey team. They've only taken 1 point off them in the last 10 meetings. Is the writing on the wall if they do meet up in the playoffs?
Well, that's a terrible record. But listen, records are there to be broken. You know, at some point, I'm sure they have to break that hoodoo. And I'd imagine that when those games were being played, you know, Altrincham were a much better team than York were. You know, so the pendulum's kind of swung a little bit now. You know, you look at where York are now in terms of the club and the positioning. You'd say they're the higher placed team, obviously, but you'd say they're the better team, so to speak. So, you know, in the playoffs, anything can happen. So, yeah, I wouldn't read too much into what's gone before.
And the team in third place, Forest Green Rovers, lost away at FC Halifax Town 2-1. For them, is it about just finishing in the top, not the top three now, it'll be second and third place?
Yeah, I think for Forest Green, it's just about rediscovering some form. You know, I think that they are going to find themselves in the playoffs. And what you do want to do is be going into the playoffs feeling confident, having got some wins under your belt, and going into that feeling like you can go out and give a good account of yourself. At the moment, they've just hit a little bit of a bump in the road. Unfortunately for them, it's coincided with a terrific run from Barnet. So, yeah, for them, it's just about rediscovering the early season form.
Arguably, the game of the night, you picked it out before we went on air with Multi-Match Live, Maidenhead versus Braintree. Firstly, why did you think this game was going to be so eventful?
Well, first of all, Maidenhead at home always pose a threat. You know, they always seem to pull results out of the bag when they need to. You know, they've made a history of doing it, getting results at home at the right time. And I think that hill that they've got there is definitely a leveler. You know, they definitely know how to play those conditions. But they went into this game on the back of 3 defeats. So at some point, I knew that was going to change. Braintree going into it, you know, they're full of confidence. You know, starting to pick up results, firing in on all cylinders, and I just felt that both of them desperately needed the 3 points to get themselves away from danger. Maidenhead obviously still in the bottom 4 before the ball was kicked. Braintree had done a really good job of just starting to creep away. So it was just a matchup that I felt was going to be a really eventful one, and that's how it proved.
And Cairo Lisby is averaging a goal every 3 games in his debut season in the National League. Braintree fans won't want us to say this, but do you think a move is going to happen before the end of the season, or could you see it happening at the end?
Well, I think, you know, from when we spoke to him earlier in the season, his main focus is getting Braintree into a position where they're safe and they're secure in the National League. So I don't envisage him even wanting to leave before the end of the season, and I don't envisage Braintree wanting to let him go anywhere. So I think that he'll be there till the end of the season, and it is about just continuing the progress. You know, he's come from lower down. This is his first season in the National League, and he's taken to it like a duck to water. You know, obviously for him, he wants to be playing in the EFL. That there's no mistake about that. But you have to continue your progress, and he's done it. You know, what you'd say the hard way. His brother Kyrese is obviously at Colchester now, and has done it from the Premier League route downwards. Kyrell's doing it in reverse order.
They might just meet in the middle somewhere.
And what a brilliant story that would be. You know, again, he is a player that I do think will go on and have a fantastic career in the Football League. But the here and now, he's making sure that he does his talking on the football pitch, and that's scoring goals for Braintree.
The biggest winners down at the bottom, AFC Fylde beating Hartlepool 2-1. Since the new interim joint bosses have come in, that's 7 points in 3 games. What a resurgence that is.
Yeah, it's incredible. And it's, you know, I feel a little bit sorry for Kevin Phillips. You know, obviously he lost his job, and since then they've beaten Altrincham away from home. They've got a really hard fought point against Gateshead, and then they've gone and got another 3 points last night. You know, it's almost a little bit of a kick in the teeth, you know, to the old manager, because you look and you think, well, why couldn't you produce those performances when I was in charge? But listen, that's what they needed. They needed that new manager bounce. They've got 2 new managers, but the main thing for them is getting away from trouble, you know. And 7 points out of 3 games is going a long way towards doing that for them.
The National League is going down to the wire. I expect it to go down to the final day of the season, and it's going to probably be the same in the National League South as well. We spoke to Mark White on Tuesday night. He was a brilliant character, full of beans, but he might be a little bit disappointed with the results that night because it was wins for Torquay, Worthing and Truro, but they did beat Boreham Wood. They still top. Worthing have got a game in hand, but it's only 1 point. It's an incredible division, isn't it?
It's insane. You know, I think it was last season where, you know, we saw on the final day, throughout the day, there was chopping and changing for playoff positions. This time, it's going to be chopping and changing at the top of the division. You know, I've no doubt that this is going to go down to the wire. And on the final day, there's going to be one of 4 or 5 teams that could all end up walking out as champions. So yeah, it just makes for brilliant viewing. You know, for a neutral, it's incredible.
Right, we've got some more messages that we've managed to find on the internet. Sam, who is a Barnet fan, says, running out of good things to say about this team. Unbelievable again. The Bees are really flying. Barney Phillips says, what a performance, Bees. As I told my son, enjoy the good times. Wow. I think he's obviously had experienced some of the bad times as well. Forest Green. Jack Bedwell says, playoff it is. Massive game, though, on Saturday. We're going to touch upon the York City game, which is exclusively live on DAZN shortly. That's set up for a real big game, isn't it?
Absolutely, especially after, you know, we was there to watch the reverse fixture. So, yeah, this one's definitely going to be entertaining as well.
Down at the bottom, an AFC Filed fan, Mike, says, we win when it matters tonight. So proud of the team and just a sense of relief with 10 games to go. We have to give it everything to stay in this league. Dylan, a Rochdale fan in block capitals, says, come on, playoffs are definitely on. Do you see that happening for Rochdale?
Yeah, I do. I do think that they needed to get that win. You know, they'd also hit a little bit of a rocky patch. And they find themselves further down the league table purely because they've not been able to fulfil the fixtures, you know, before them. You know, their pitch has been in a bit of a state and the weather has hindered their progress. Having those games in hand only make a difference if you're able to go and get points from them. You know, so Tuesday night was a huge step in the right direction. And now I'm sure Jimmy McNulty and his team will be hoping that they can now go on a run, get themselves into the playoffs. And I think when you actually see it, you know, you see your name in those playoff positions, that also gives you a little bit of a boost. At the moment, they're in a bit of a false position and you don't really know which way it's going to fall.
Yeah, one fan who knows exactly what position his team is in is Mitchell Clark. He supports Yeovil. We've got 2 months to play to sort out our identity going into next season and try to gain a bit of pride. Yeovil can't go up, they can't go down, but this is probably my favourite message that we found. Callum Hallett says, waking up for work at 5:15 after losing 5-0 hurts even more. 2 crying, laughing emojis. The fans do travel in their numbers, but coming off a defeat like that must hurt a little bit, especially when you have to get up the next morning at 5:15.
Yeah, well, getting up at 5:15 hurts.
You probably never got up at 5:15, have you?
Once or twice. I can understand, you know, their disappointment. I look at Yeovil and I think, put things in perspective, it's your first season back in the National League and they're doing fantastic. You know, going up against Barnet, who haven't lost at home in over a year. You know, that was always going to be a tall order. And, you know, Barnet had 2 penalties at the end of the game as well to make it 5. So the scoreline, I think, probably flatters Barnet, even though they were the better team on the night. But it's definitely not doom and gloom for Yeovil. You know, they could be near the bottom of the division, struggling and fighting to try and stay in the league. They're not. They're in a great position and they've played some fantastic football this season. I understand what they're saying about identity. They probably just want to see a little bit more progression so that they can feel confident that they can go and challenge for a playoff position next year. But this year is about consolidation, making sure that you stay away from trouble, and Yeovil have definitely done that.
Yeah, set up to be a great finish in the National League. Right, there were 34 goals on Tuesday night. You've got your work cut out to pick your top 3 of the evening, starting with number 3.
Well, number 3, I've gone with Alex Hunt. It was a fantastic strike. Funny enough, all of these strikes are from long range. You know, there was probably about 6 or 7 that we could have picked from. But Alex Hunt, you know, this one here, he just touches it out of his feet, lets fly, and unfortunately for him, it didn't manage to get his team any points, but a magnificent
Small consolation for him.
Indeed.
Number 2, who have you got?
Number 2, I've gone for David Ferguson, who, again, a fantastic strike. The free kick, first of all, I'm looking at the position of it and I'm thinking, surely you're not going to shoot from there. But he does, he takes it on, fantastic technique, and the way it flies into the back of the net, you know, I never had the ability to do that, so fair play to David.
And in at number 1, who's top spot?
Number 1, I have to give it to Anthony Hartigan. You know, the short corner, I've seen him do this many a time. He's a great striker of the ball, But once they take that short corner, he has one thing in his mind, and he's looking to whip that towards the far post. He catches it sweet, and it ends up far top corner, and again just goes towards Barnet going in and claiming all 3 points and consolidating their position at the top of the division. So yeah, Anthony Hartigan gets the nod this week.
A brilliant selection of goals picked by Erin McLean there. Right, coming up later in the show, we will be looking ahead to this Saturday's fixtures, which includes the big one, York City versus Forest Green, exclusively live on DAZN. We'll see you after the break.
"47 years of promoting boxing. What a ride it's been." I was 23 years old at the time. I got an invite from the Boxing Board of Control to take a licence out. Back then, it was all run by the cartel.
We have a new promoter in British Championship Boxing, Frank Warren.
People liked it, I think, the fact that someone was taking the cartel on. I've never been afraid about shaking things up and working with new media.
This is a bit of a dream come true.
Pay-per-view, satellite TV.
Very proud of Amir. What he done was fantastic.
Bringing shows in from America Live. I've been lucky enough to promote some of the biggest names in boxing.
I'd like to thank Mr. Frank Warren for having me over here.
Just when you think it can't get any bigger, my mobile rang. We get this call from His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh. Off we went to the races. I'm as competitive as my fighters, and I fight for my fighters. I'm always looking for the next challenge, and I know there's one there now.
Queensbury arrives at the home of boxing, DAZN, multi-year deal, let's go.
This is a company that is devoted to boxing. They have a worldwide platform. And for us, that is very, very important to do what Queensbury is doing, to be expanding and building, working together for the betterment of boxing, as I believe it will be.
DAZN is the global home of women's football, bringing you the best live games. With the biggest stars, battling it out in the biggest competitions.
Cue the chaos! First blood in the title decider. Would you believe it?
Witness every season-defining moment.
Written in the stars!
Live and on demand, only on DAZN.
We head to York City on Saturday as the Minster men take on Forest Green. We start our coverage for this top-of-the-table clash from 5 p.m. and you can watch it exclusively live on DAZN. Also catch all the goals and action from this week's round of the National League with our highlight show, exclusively live on DAZN every Sunday from 4. There is only one place to start for this weekend's fixtures, and that is, of course, York City versus Forest Green, exclusively live on DAZN. Erin, is this now a match-up for second and third?
Not quite yet. You know, there's still a lot of football to be played, and they still have to keep believing that they can close the gap on leaders Barnet and still try and put them under pressure. If Barnet continue the form that they're on, then yes, the next best thing is to finish in those second and third spots. And, you know, these two teams occupy those positions at the moment. And it's imperative that they continue to do that because that chasing pack just behind them will be desperate to displace them.
Both coming off the back of defeats in midweek. Who needs this victory more?
I'd say both do. You know, both teams need to bounce back as quick as they can. And like I said, any team that's going to find themselves in the playoffs, what you want to do is be going into it full of confidence, in good form, and give yourself the best possible chance of doing yourself justice on whichever given day. So, you know, both teams will want to bounce back from defeat in midweek.
Is there an extra little bit of edge for York City following the defeat earlier in the season? You were at that game. Why were Forest Green so dominant in their performance in getting the 2-0 victory?
Well, I think on the day, Forest Green, just played better. I think McAllister was absolutely outstanding. And for York, it just seemed like they didn't have a plan B. Once they want to get the ball down and play, and they play very attractive football. But Forest Green had a game plan, snuffed that out, and then York weren't able to find a different way to win, a different way to play. I think they have that now. I think with the signing of Josh Stones, I think they now have that, and they can mix up their game a little bit. So they'll feel like they can go and give definitely a better account of themselves than they did probably in that game. And you'd have to say they're probably the team that's in better form. Forest Green have just hit a little bit of a bump in the road. But like I say, both teams desperate to get back to winning ways.
There's another cracking game down at the bottom of the table, AFC Fylde versus Braintree. You predicted a great game in midweek. What are you predicting for this one?
Again, another cracking game. I think both teams will definitely go for it. Both teams will want to win, and it's important for both teams to try and get maximum points. If you can't win the game, then make sure you don't lose it. Like we saw with Braintree, at one point it looked like they were going to go and lose that game to Maidenhead, especially with having John Akinde sent off. You felt that they could go on and lose that, but showed great character. John Akinde will be missing for this weekend, which is a huge blow for them. But another opportunity for the likes of Cairo Lisby to step up and lead the line.
And it's an opportunity for Oldham as well at the weekend. They travel to Tamworth, who themselves are coming off a great win in midweek. They're just sort of stuttering a little bit at the minute, Oldham. What do you put that down to?
Well, they're desperately looking for a striker. I think goals is what's probably costing them at the moment. And they do have some good strikers at the club. You look at the likes of Fondop, you look at the likes of Norwood. But unfortunately, things just aren't going for them at the moment. And you'd have to say that they are a team searching for a level of consistency. In terms of Tamworth, similar to Yeovil, fantastic season so far, consolidated in the National League, getting some really good wins. And you've got to say their winning midweek was brilliant, because they were up against a Wealdstone team that had won three games in a row. So to go and put 4 past them, and win convincingly, that will give them huge confidence. And they'll go into this game, especially at home on their pitch, they'll go into this full of confidence and believing they can win.
Yeah, it's going to be a great weekend of National League football, exclusively live on DAZN. Down in the National League North, there's another great game taking place at the top. Chorley versus Chester. That is set up to be another belting game in the National League North, where that is so tight as well. And we spoke to Phil Brown in midweek, who is a brilliant character to have in the game. And you can just sense that he still loves being a manager at this level. Yeah,
well, listen, at 65 years old, he's been at the very top. And, he said that he still gets just as much satisfaction, been managing in the National League North. And I think for somebody of his experience, for him just seeing young players develop, being able to help them on their journeys, and then seeing them go out and do what they've worked on all week in training and produce the goods. He's at a fantastic club, and they've got a real chance of going on and getting promotion back into the National League. At the end of the season last year, I spoke to him, and he was desperate to keep them in the division. They just fell short, and he felt that certain players had let him down. He's cleared the decks, brought in some fresh faces, and this year they're having a real go. So, I do genuinely hope that they're able to see that through and get the rewards for that.
And down in the National League South, Dorking host Chelmsford City, who have just announced that Angelo Harrop, who was the former Braintree manager, will be taking charge of Chelmsford next season. And Worthing take on Chesham. So 2 home games for the top 2. Mark White, having spoken to him many times, is really bubbly, always lighted, but you could sense that, not pressure as much, but there was a different tone to him when we spoke to him. He knows how difficult it is going to be to win this division.
Absolutely, and because it's so tight, one bad result, you can see you drop 2 or 3 places. He's totally aware of the battle that they've got ahead. He understands that, you can't take anything for granted. And though they sit at the top of the division now, that's subject to change. You know, so he needs to keep his feet on the ground and keep his players' feet on the ground and just continue to do what they've done. You know, do what's got you to the top of the league and make sure that you can remain consistent so that, you know, he can find himself back in the National League which is where he wants to be.
Yeah, it's going to be a very exciting finish to the National League season. And in just 100 days, we will be bringing you the biggest club competition on earth. And we can't wait. It is second versus third this Saturday, and we are live from York City's LNER Community Stadium from 5 p.m. With Barnet now 9 points clear at the top, this game has huge significance at the top of the table, and you can see it exclusively live right here on DAZN. Our final word of the episode has got to go to another fantastic night at the Hive with Barnet putting on a 5-star performance against Yeovil. It's worth seeing that Anthony Hartigan goal again. It's Aaron's top pick of the week. A special strike on a special night for the Bees.
Yeah, it was. You know, for them to put five goals in and to extend their gap at the top of the division. You know, it was the perfect evening for Dean Brennan and his team, and yeah, he'll be absolutely delighted with that.
Before York City kick a ball next, they could be 12 points behind Barnet. How much can that affect a player's psychology going into a game?
Well, I think they'll be excited about it. You know, we've spent time down at Barnet, and, you know, there's a real feel-good factor down there. The job that Dean Brennan's done since he's taken over as manager has been unbelievable. You know, when he first came in, he was tasked with keeping them safe. You know, he did that. The following season, he ran it close to and finished second. They are desperate this year to go one better and finish top of the division. And like I said, they have a points tally in mind. You know, I think they want to get to 100 points. If they feel that if they get to 100 points, that will get them over the line, which in the Wrexham and Notts County season, we saw that that's not always the case. But, you know, the job that he's doing there is outstanding, and long may it continue.
What do you think a Dean Brennan promotion party will look like?
Well,
hope you get an invite.
Yeah, I'll be looking out in the post for my invitation. But yeah, listen, Dean has such a good relationship with his players. He has a serious side to him, but he's very much a manager that is approachable and has always loves to banter with the lads. What's great is they've been able to combine the two. You know, it's one thing to have a good relationship and not get performances. He does both. They get performances on the pitch, and there's a respect and a banter level that they have. So, you know, I'm sure that end of season party will be one, and they'll be on to the chairman to dip his hand in his pocket and fund it as well, I'm sure. It's
set up to be a very exciting end to the season in the National League. We'll be covering it exclusively on DAZN right here. That is it from us for this week's episode. Myself and Erin will see you at the LNER Community Stadium for York City versus Forest Green on Saturday. Good evening and welcome to Multi-Match Live.
Here on DAZN, we bring you all the goals, action and drama from tonight's National League game.
With eagle eyes is York City striker Josh Stones. How are you, sir?
Ball towards Fondo, and he scored!
One match just scored.
That's the best performance as a team I've seen with them season. People have written you off.
Josh, firstly, mate, where are you?
I'm sitting in my car outside Dagenham Redbridge Stadium. I've popped out to have a chat with you two guys before I go back in to watch the rest of the game.
What a night of National League football.
Brilliant. It gives you everything.
Can't beat the National League live coverage on DAZN. Have a wonderful evening. We'll see you next time.
What a wonderful goal.